Hello friends and welcome. Today I am going to deliver a lecture on sedimentation, basic principles of centrifugation, differential density gradient, isopycnic and equilibrium centrifugation, and preparative and analytical ultracentrifugation techniques. Now, let us first try to have a look at the main objectives of today's deliberation. Number first, to understand the concept of sedimentation. Number second, to give a general idea about the basic principles of centrifugation. Number third, we shall be explaining differential density gradient. Number fourth, to learn about isopycnic and equilibrium centrifugation, and finally, we shall be discussing preparative and analytical ultracentrifugation techniques. Now, we will start with the introduction about the concept of sedimentation. Sedimentation is the tendency for particles in suspension to settle out of the fluid in which they are entrained and come to rest against a barrier. This is due to their motion through the fluid in response to the forces acting on them, that is, these forces can be due to gravity, centrifugal acceleration or electromagnetism. Settling is the falling of suspended particles through the liquid, whereas sedimentation is the termination of the settling process. Sedimentation may pertain to objects of various sizes, ranging from large rocks in flowing water to suspensions of dust and pollen particles to cellular suspensions to solutions of single molecules such as proteins and peptides. Even small molecules supply a sufficiently strong force to produce significant sedimentation. In a sedimentation experiment, the applied force accelerates the particles to a terminal velocity v terminal, at which the applied force is exactly cancelled by an opposing drag force. For small enough particles, the drag force varies linearly with the terminal velocity, that is, F drag is equal to Fv terminal, where F depends only on the properties of the particle and the surrounding fluid. Similarly, the applied force generally varies linearly with some coupling constant, denoted here as small q, that depends only on the properties of the particle, that is, F applied is equal to QE applied. Hence, it is generally possible to define a sedimentation coefficient S is equal to Q divided by F, that depends only on the properties of the particle and the surrounding fluid. Thus, measuring S can reveal underlying properties of the particle. The sedimentation of a single particle under gravity is described by the Mason-Weaver equation, which has a simple exact solution. The sedimentation coefficient S in this case equals mb divided by F, where mb is the buoyant mass. The sedimentation of a single particle under centrifugal force is described by the Lamb equation, which likewise has an exact solution. The sedimentation coefficient S also equals mb divided by F, where mb is the buoyant mass. However, the Lamb equation differs from the Mason-Weaver equation because the centrifugal force depends on the radius from the origin of rotation, whereas in the Mason-Weaver equation, gravity is constant. Now that we have understood about the concept of sedimentation, let us now discuss the basic principles of centrifugation. A centrifuge is the equipment generally driven by an electric motor that puts an object to rotate around fixed axes and a perpendicular force is applied to axes. The particles get separated according to their size, shape, density, viscosity of the medium and rotor speed. The centrifuge involves principle of sedimentation, where the acceleration at centripetal force causes denser substances to separate out along the radial direction at the bottom of the tube. By the same concept, lighter objects will tend to move to the top of the tube in their rotating picture, move to the center. In a solution, particles whose density is higher than that of the solvent sink and particles that are lighter than it float to the top. The greater the difference in density, the faster they move. If there is no difference in density, which is an isopycnic condition, the particles stay steady. To take advantage of even tiny differences in density to separate various particles in a solution, gravity can be replaced with the much more powerful centrifugal force provided by a centrifuge. Two forces counteract the centrifugal force acting on the suspended particles. Number first is the buoyant force. This is the force with which the particles must displace the liquid media into which they sediment. And number second is the frictional force. This is the force generated by the particles as they migrate through the solution. There are three types of centrifuge designed for different applications. Industrial scale centrifuges are commonly used in manufacturing and waste processing to sediment suspended solids or to separate immiscible liquids. An example is the cream separator found in dairies. Very high speed centrifuges and ultracentrifuges able to provide very high accelerations can separate fine particles down to the nanoscale and molecules of different masses. Large centrifuges are used to simulate high gravity or acceleration environments. Medium-sized centrifuges are used in washing machines and at some swimming pools to wring water out of fabrics. Gas centrifuges are used for isotope separation, such as to enrich nuclear fuel for fissile isotopes. The acceleration achieved by the centrifugation is expressed as a multiple of the Earth's gravitational force. Two types of rotor are available in high-powered centrifuges, that is, fixed angle rotors and swing out rotors that have movable bucket containers. The tubes or buckets used for centrifugation are made of plastic and have to be very precisely adjusted to avoid any imbalance that could lead to accidents. Relative centrifugal force F is equal to mr omega square, where m is equal to mass of particle, r is the radius of rotation, that is distance of particle from axis of rotation, and omega is average angular velocity. The velocity v of particle sedimentation during centrifugation depends on the angular velocity omega of the rotor, its effective radius, and the particle's sedimentation properties. These properties are expressed as the sedimentation coefficient S, that is 1 Swedberg is equal to 10 raised power minus 13 seconds. The sedimentation coefficient depends on the mass m of the particle, its shape, which is expressed as the coefficient of friction F, and its density. Now coming to the applications of centrifugation in pharmaceutical industries. Number first is the production of bulk drugs. Number second, production of biological products. Number third, evaluation of suspensions and emulsions. Number fourth, determination of molecular weight of colloids. Now let us discuss the another part of our today's lecture, that is differential density gradient. Density gradient centrifugation is used to separate macromolecules that differ only slightly in size or density. Two techniques are commonly used. In zonal centrifugation, the sample being separated, for example a cell extract or cells, is placed on top of the centrifugation solution as a thin layer. During centrifugation, the particles move through the solution due to their greater density. The rate of movement basically depends on their molecular mass. Centrifugation stops before the particles reach the bottom of the tube. Drilling a hole into the centrifugation tube and allowing the contents to drip out makes it possible to collect the different particles in separate fractions. During centrifugation, the solution tube is stabilized in the tube by a density gradient. This consists of solutions of carbohydrates or colloidal silica gel, the concentration of which increases from the surface of the tube to the bottom. Density gradients prevent the formation of convection currents, which would impair the separation of the particles. Isopycnic centrifugation, which takes much longer, starts with a CSCl solution in which the sample material, for example DNA, RNA or viruses, is homogeneously distributed. A density gradient only forms during centrifugation as a result of sedimentation and diffusion processes. Each particle moves to the region corresponding to its own Biot density. Centrifugation stops once equilibrium has been reached. The samples are obtained by fractionation and their concentration is measured using the appropriate methods. Density gradients are used in many different operations. Number first, to separate particles of different densities, that is isopycnography, which is short for equilibrium density gradient centrifugation. Number second, to separate particles of different sizes, that is sedimentation centrifugation. Number third, column elutions that must smoothly go from one concentration to another. Number fourth, isolation of diamond dust, that is isopycnography. Number fifth, isolation of bovine egg sperm from Y sperm. There are several ways for making density gradients, including those that use syringes, twin linked containers and other devices. Now, let us discuss isopycnic and equilibrium centrifugation. Isopycnic centrifugation, also known as density gradient centrifugation or equilibrium sedimentation, is a technique used to separate molecules on the basis of Biot density. The word isopycnic means equal density. Typically, a self-generating density gradient is established via equilibrium sedimentation and then analyze molecules concentrated as bands where the molecule density matches that of the surrounding solution. In isopycnic technique, the density gradient column encompasses the whole range of densities of the sample particles. The sample is uniformly mixed with the gradient material. Each particle will sediment only to the position in the centrifuge tube at which the gradient density is equal to its own density, and there it will remain. The isopycnic technique therefore separates particles into separate zones solely on the basis of their density differences independent of time. In many density gradient experiments, particles of both the rate zonal and the isopycnic principles may enter into the final separations. For example, the gradient may be of such a density range that one component sediments to its density in the tube and remains there, while another component sediments to the bottom of the tube. The self-generating gradient technique often requires the long hours of centrifugation. Equilibrium sedimentation is particularly valuable for: number first, establishing whether the native state of a protein is a monomer, dimer, trimer, etc. Number second, measuring the equilibrium constant for association of proteins which reversibly self-associate to form oligomers. Number third, determining whether proteins weakly self-associate at high concentrations and characterizing their repulsive or attractive interactions. Number fourth, measuring the stoichiometry of complexes between two or more different proteins or between a protein and a non-protein ligand. Number fifth, measuring the equilibrium constants for reversible protein-protein and protein-ligand interactions. In sedimentation equilibrium, the sample is spun in an analytical ultracentrifuge at a speed high enough to force the protein towards the outside of the rotor but not high enough to cause the sample to form a pellet. As the centrifugal force produces a gradient in protein concentration across the centrifuge cell, diffusion acts to oppose this concentration gradient. Eventually, an exact balance is reached between sedimentation and diffusion, and the concentration distribution reaches an equilibrium. This equilibrium concentration distribution across the cell is then measured while the sample is spinning using either absorbance or refractive index detection. The key point about sedimentation equilibrium is that the concentration distribution at equilibrium depends only on molecular mass and is entirely independent of the shape of the molecule. Now, let us discuss the last part of our today's lecture, that is preparative and analytical ultracentrifugation techniques. The ultracentrifuge is a centrifuge optimized for spinning a rotor at very high speeds, capable of generating accelerations as high as 10 lakh g, which is approximately equal to 9.8 kilometers per second. There are two kinds of ultracentrifuges, the preparative and the analytical ultracentrifuge. Both classes of instruments find important uses in molecular biology, biochemistry and polymer science. Theodor Svedberg invented the analytical ultracentrifuge in 1925 and won the Nobel Prize in Chemistry in 1926 for his research on colloids and proteins using the ultracentrifuge. The vacuum ultracentrifuge was invented by Edward Graydon Pickles in the physics department at the University of Virginia. It was his contribution of the vacuum which allowed a reduction in friction generated at high speeds. Now, coming to the analytical ultracentrifugation. In principle, analytical centrifugation is similar to differential centrifugation in that both techniques apply the principles of centrifugal acceleration to separate components of a sample based on shape and mass differences. They both require a rotor capable of spinning samples at a speed high enough to generate forces up to tens of thousand times greater than the force of gravity. However, analytical centrifugation is able to perform analysis of the concentration of the sample during centrifugation through the incorporation of light detection devices into the system, and this is the key point that differentiates the two techniques. In an analytical ultracentrifuge, a sample being spun can be monitored in real time through an optical detection system using ultraviolet light absorption and interference optical refractive index sensitive system. This allows the operator to observe the evolution of the sample concentration versus the axis of rotation profile as a result of the applied centrifugal field. With modern instrumentation, these observations are electronically digitized and stored for further mathematical analysis. Two kinds of experiments are commonly performed on these instruments, that is, sedimentation velocity experiments and sedimentation equilibrium experiments. Sedimentation velocity experiments aim to interpret the entire time course of sedimentation and report on the shape and molar mass of the dissolved macromolecules as well as their size distribution. Sedimentation equilibrium experiments are concerned only with the final steady state of the experiment, while sedimentation is balanced by diffusion opposing the concentration gradients, resulting in a time-independent concentration profile. Analytical ultracentrifugation has recently seen a rise in use because of increased ease of analysis with modern computers and the development of software, including an National Institutes of Health supported software package which is called as SEDFIT. Now, the applications. Number first, determine sample purity. Number second, characterize assembly and disassembly mechanisms of biomolecular complexes. Number third, determine subunit stoichiometries. Number 4, detect and characterize macromolecular conformational changes. Number 5, measure equilibrium constants and thermodynamic parameters for self and hetero-associating system. Now, at last, let us discuss preparative ultracentrifugation. Preparative ultracentrifuges are available with a wide variety of rotors suitable for a great range of experiments. Most rotors are designed to hold tubes that contain the samples. Swinging bucket rotors allow the tubes to hang on hinges so the tubes reorient to the horizontal as the rotor initially accelerates. Fixed angle rotors are made of a single block of material and hold the tubes in cavities bored at a predetermined angle. Zonal motors are designed to contain a large volume of sample in a single central cavity rather than in tubes. Some zonal rotors are capable of dynamic loading and unloading of samples while the rotor is spinning at high speed. Preparative rotors are used in biology for pelleting of fine particulate fractions such as cellular organelles, mitochondria, microsomes, ribosomes, and viruses. They can also be used for gradient separations in which the tubes are filled from top to bottom with an increasing concentration of a dense substance in solution. After the sample has spun at high speed for sufficient time to produce the separation, the rotor is allowed to come to a smooth stop and the gradient is gently pumped out of each tube to isolate the separated components. That's all about today's lecture. Hope you have understood it well. Thank you very much and goodbye.